Good evening. How everyone done today? God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma Jill Space Divine. I'm here to give you the show news on today. And first we're gonna start with 911 dispatch. Now this story happened 2 years ago. But she sued and it came to pass. So the dollar named Kelly. So she called the dispatch, for her mother. Her mother was bleeding so badly. Her mother was bleeding so bad. And she called the dispatch to bring someone over to her home, so her mother need help. But the dispatcher, her name was Mr. Price, he refused to send, she refused to send an ambulance unless she go to the hospital, unless she said she going to the hospital. So she made a decision that I'm not gonna send no ambulance to your house unless you say you're going to the hospital. You know, but we down the line we gonna see that that was not her decision to make. So the 911 operator had been charged with involuntary manslaughter after he declined to send an ambulance to a bleeding woman in Pennsylvania. Now, this happened in Pennsylvania. Now, lack of emergency medical care, you know, Kelly mom had died. She died a day after, you know. Now, the dispatcher did not want it to send service for medical care. She didn't want to send service for medical care. She made a decision like, I'm not sending no services to your house unless you say you want to go to the hospital. Unless you go to the hospital. That was her decision that she made. So it's not Price's decision. You know, should have sent. He has should have had sent an uh, ambulance to the lady, to the woman's house. Because send an ambulance to the woman's house and let the professional decide if she needs to go to the hospital. Her job when someone called for ambulance, you're supposed to send an ambulance to that person's house. Let the professional decide if she able to go, if she needs to go to the hospital or not. So this happened 2 years. This 2 years later. So the officer had charged the dispatcher, Mr. Price. They charged him with involuntary manslaughter. You know, so the maximum she was served like 5 years in prison. So one, all dispatcher. If anyone call for medical service, do not refuse. Do not refuse. It may be life or death. It's not your decision to make if they should go to the hospital or not. The health professionals will be going to their house and they have to decide if she need medical care or she need to go to the hospital. So two, let the professional make those decisions. If they have if they have to go to the hospital or they need medical care. That's why they professional. So if someone call for an ambulance to get to their house, automatically just send an ambulance to their house and let the professional make a decision if they have to go to the hospital or they just need medical care. Let them make that decision. 911 dispatch should not make those decisions because your job depends on life and death. So three, accept all calls, and that's what I just said. Accept all calls and send services to anyone house that need attention, medical attention. For your job is very serious and important. When you're a 911 dispatch, your job is very serious and is very important. Your job depends on life and death. You have to think quick when somebody calls. You have to get the full information of the person's name, the location, what the problem is. So your job is very serious and is very important. So you have to take your job serious when someone calls. You have to. It's someone bleeding and then they need medical care and they call for an ambulance. Don't ask no more questions. Just ask the information that you need to send an ambulance to that person's house. You know, and let the professional deal with any decision they may have to make. So depend on making, because your job, you have to depend on making the right choice. You know, the making the right choice, and the right choice is getting full information of the person name, what's going on, the address, the location, and send the ambulance to that person home. You have to make the right decision when you're a 911 dispatch. Six, your job is to help save lives. Your job is to help save lives. You have to, when somebody call, I did dispatch before. I ain't do 911 dispatch. But when somebody call, you have to quick thinking. You have to think quick. You got to hurry up and get that information quick as possible. Because your job, a person's life is in your hands. You know, a person's life is in your hands. So you cannot refuse nobody's life. You have to save life the best way you can. So I hope all dispatch learn from this lesson. When someone call 911, if they call for police, if they call for an ambulance, bring the services to that person home, because their life depend on life and death. You know, make sure you get the full information. Make sure you get the full information. Because you have to think quick. But you can't make the decision on refusing someone. You cannot refuse no one. Someone need a police at their house. Someone need an ambulance at their house. You have to make that decision to send someone over there. You can't refuse nobody's services. You can't refuse nobody's services. You have to send them to that person home, quick as possible. So that's a story. That suit just not came in place, and it happened 2 years ago. So that's just a tip for all the 911 dispatch. Don't refuse no one, even if they call the police or they call for an ambulance, because your job depends on a person's life or death. Because that woman died a day after. Only if she would have sent someone to Miss Kelly home, her mama could have been saved. Could have been saved. So that's the story on that. So now we're gonna talk about the airline. Unaccompanied traveling alone. That's me and a child. So their policy is a child under 14 years old can travel. Alone. So 12-year-old airline accompanied to exit on a plane alone after the flight. So someone's supposed to meet this child at the baggage claim after she got off the plane. But they saw her just traveling alone. Got on the wrong flight. So you have to be careful when you're sending your children traveling alone. So the family pay extra, fee for the unaccompanied minor services. So fee is $150 for a accompanied child to travel alone. So the accompanied after the flight was told that she would be looked after on this flight. So that's their policy. They're supposed to look after their child. Because it's legal. They allow. They have special fees for a child traveling by themselves, and they have a special policy what they do. Of trying to protect their child while they by themselves. So she thought they was gonna look after the child. After the flight or during the flight. So someone was going to meet her at the baggage claim area where they could reunite. The child was going to meet her father. You know, but the father was there, the child wasn't there. So American Airlines said children between, this their policy, children between ages 5 years old to 14 years old are required uh, to use the company the company are allowed to accompany minor services when they fly alone. And see right there, 5 years old to between 14, 5 to to 14 years old, that's too young. That's too young. Just like this happened with this case here. Got on the wrong flight. The father at the airport waiting on his child, she's somewhere else. So a five between 5 years old and 14 years old is too young. So the services include early on boarding and an airport escort and supposed to meet the child and take them to their gate. So when the child get off the gate, you know, the employees of airlines supposed to take their child to the gate, to the flight connection, or to an authorized adult guardians who supposed to pick them up. So when they apply for the child to travel alone, they also have to have the person that's sending them, and also have to have the person who picking them up. So the child after the flight landed according to the airline website. So when you apply for this here, you got to go on the website and apply for this here. And this state policy that someone's supposed to be with their child and to escort this child to the gate, for that person to pick them up. Because they have to have that person name who picking them up and the person name who's sending the child along. You know, so so American Airline, they care deeply about their passion because they did apologize. Is admitting to providing the safe, and their job is to provide safe and pleasant travel experience from them. So they apologize for the confusion that had happened. So they apologize for the child that got on the wrong, got she got the flight to the wrong country. So and they did refund the money back. So I see you're all on airline policy. It's on company child for 5 years old to 14 years old to travel alone. And you are supposed to escort them to the pickup by adult or guardians authorized to meet them. You know, and so I request that an unaccompanied child, 14 years old, 5 years old to 14, is too young to be traveling by themselves. Just like we had this mistake happen just now. You know, I think the child should be 14 years on up. I requested the child should be 14 years on up to be traveling alone, and pick up, so under 14 years old is just too young, to fly alone. I understand y'all apologize and y'all agree. I disagree for the near future. So one, I know it was a misunderstanding. That you all supposed to look after the company child. That's your policy. But we just had a mishap. Where the child was way somewhere else when the father at the baggage claim waiting on his daughter. So two, any child can come up missing or being taken. You know, if you 14 years, it can happen at 14 on up too. But it's really 14 to 5 years old, 14 years old under is really too young. Taken by someone watching them traveling alone. Because see, when you're sending a child alone, you have to realize someone might be monitoring them, watching them, you know, and maybe try to catch them at, because strangers are good for trying to get kids candy or something. So we have to look at other things like this here. I know that's your policy, but I think 5 years old to 14 years old to travel alone, I think that's too young. I think 14 years old on up should be appropriate age to be traveling alone. So either way, under 14 years old age is young and not safe to travel alone. So I have some kind of safety tips since since the airline um have a policy for unaccompanied children to travel alone. I mean, the parents should have some kind of safety tips. I have some kind of safety tips, for any unaccompanied that's flying solo. Make sure your child are prepared. So one, I have contact numbers, contact numbers for them, the person that's sending them. the mom, auntie, whoever is sending the child, make sure that child have your phone number. Okay, and two, and make sure that person have the contact number for the person he or she going to meet. So the child needs to have a contact number for the person that's sending them. They need a contact number who picking them up. So if anything go wrong, she don't see the person picking her up or anything. If body trying to call them, and also get them a prepaid phone. For them to call either one of y'all for help. To let them know what's going on. Somebody, a man trying to run me away or over here or wherever the case, or I'm lost. Have these contact numbers for that child when they're traveling alone. you know. So too, train them to never walk up with a stranger, because a stranger might come along and say, "I got some candy, I got a baby doll, I got some trains for you to play with," or whatever the case is. And kids love toys, kids love candy and treats. So train them not to go along with strangers while they're traveling alone. So unless it's an airline employee and they have to have a uniform on, they have to have a work badge on. So you have to train them these things if y'all gonna be sending your child to travel alone, and that's an airline policy. I can't stop airline policy, but 5 years old to 14 years old, I think that's too young to travel alone. So have these contact numbers with your kids. Also have, just give them a prepaid phone. And make sure they have enough minutes on there for them to use for emergency. Or give them any kind of Boost Mobile phone. Have them a Boost Mobile phone and have this contact number. So if anyone try to grab them, or if they lost, however the case may be, they have some contact number to call. If they're lost and they go to the airline people, they can have, she can give them the contact numbers to call the parent, let them know we have your child. She at the wrong, even though the airline have those information, but suppose she's somewhere else, and then they got to try to pull up from where airline she come from at another state. So that's what I'm saying. Have your child with these contact information, and it be kind of helpful when the child get lost. You can have the mishap. Because their policy is supposed to look after the child that's traveling along. And when the flight stop, they're supposed to take their child, escort them. But sometimes it don't work out that way, like it happened just now. Sometimes it don't work that way. The child can wander off somewhere or get on the wrong flight. So the child still need to have contact information in case these things happen again. And also have pictures. Give her some pictures of her mom. Give her pictures of who she's gonna meet, and have a picture of herself with her name on it. So in case she lose her bag, to have a picture of how she look and who the bags belong to, and have contact number. Call, look, we found your daughter bag, but we don't see your daughter. So all that kind of come in place, and it can be very helpful. So that's safety tips of a company, traveling alone. So we talk about the 911 dispatch refuse to send an ambulance to a person home where her mother had died the next day. Because she lack of sending anyone to her house unless they say they was going to the hospital. I feel, she probably just needed medical care. But then if she would have sent the ambulance over there, they professional. They would have known if she need more than medical care that she had to go to the hospital. It was their job to make those decisions. It wasn't a 911 job to make those decisions. So she gonna serve like 5 years in prison because the case just not went through. So for all dispatch, learn from this lesson. Anyone call for the police or for the ambulance. Don't refuse no one. I don't care if they say, well, I think she just need medical care. Just send someone. And that was the case was. She said, no, we can't send someone like that. You have to say you need to go to the hospital. So since she refused to say she needed to go to the hospital, she refused to send someone over there. And her mother died the next day. And I think that's a shame because a 911 dispatch, regardless if they need medical care or not, send someone to their house. Your job depends on life and death. You got to save lives. You have your job is to save lives. So when you get phone calls, you have to think quick. You can't make those decisions. Let the police and let the ambulance make those decisions. You just send somebody to somebody's house. Just send somebody to somebody's house. Don't try to make those decisions. That was the police fault, and that's what the ambulance for. They professional. When they get there, they'll see if they need more than medical care, if they need to go to the hospital. That's their job. Your job is when someone calls you to send someone over to someone home. So we just talked about that, the 911 dispatch. We also talk about the unaccompanied child that's traveling alone. They got transferred on to the wrong country. You know, and everything got back in place. Everything fall back in place. They refund the money back, and the airline did apologize. For the misconstrued that went on. They did apologize, and all they did was get them some safety tips. For the child traveling alone. Make sure you give them a phone, a prepaid phone. Make sure you get some contact numbers. The person that's sending them, the person that's supposed to meet them, and also have a picture of your mom, your father, who else supposed to be sending. You have some pictures of them. Have a picture of the child to have in that bag in case she dropped that bag. They'll know how she looks to return the bag to, or either call the contact numbers or let them know that we found her bag. So we have to think about all these things, especially when you're having your child traveling alone, because things are so crazy right now. You might have a sick person just monitoring that child, and monitor just trying to see if he or she is alone. So you have to think about all these things because there's so much stuff is going on right now. You want your child to be safe and be prepared. And so that's all the show news I have for you on today. And I see y'all on the next video. Have a nice day.